Welcome back, everyone. Ready for another deep dive with Saadi?
Always ready.
Okay, so we're on episode 27 of our exploration of Marifat.
Those conversations with Dr. Dinani and Dr. Larijani.
Exactly. 50 episodes. And honestly, each one feels like opening a treasure chest.
Full of those little gems of wisdom, you know?
And before we jump in, quick reminder for everyone, we're working with translations here.
Always tricky, but we're doing our best to capture the essence.
So today's dive, well, it's about something we've all probably experienced.
Intriguing. Lay it on me.
It's that feeling of thinking you know something, being absolutely assured.
Oh, yeah.
And then, bam, turns out you were totally wrong.
Happens to the best of us. But Saadi, he takes it a step further.
How so?
Well, in this episode of Marifat, they're talking about wahm.
Often translated as delusion, right?
Right. But it's not just about, like, clinical insanity. Saadi's suggesting it's more widespread.
Even among seemingly normal people.
Exactly. We all have blind spots, assumptions we don't even realize are guiding us.
Okay, I'm already hooked. How does he explain this wahm?
Well, Dr. Dinani starts with this foundation, fail and qabil, the agent and the recipient. It's about cause and effect, but in a very specific way.
Give me an example.
Think of rain. It's a gift, right? An agent of life.
Sure.
But what it does depends entirely on where it falls.
Okay, so fertile ground, you get growth. Salt, flat, not so much.
Exactly. And Saadi, he's applying this to everything. Knowledge, advice, our experiences, we're all recipient.
But are we the right ground for those things to take root? Wow, okay.
That's the question he's posing, and this leads right into wahm.
I see it, yeah. So how does he connect them?
Dr. Dinani quotes Saadi. What use is good advice if there are no intelligent ears to hear it?
Oh, so wahm is like having ears that can't truly hear. You're closed off.
Precisely. And remember, this isn't just about, like, rejecting good advice.
It's about being blind to truth in general.
Exactly. Even when it's staring us in the face. There's a story Dr. Dinani tells about a patient convinced he was a grain of millet.
Oh, I remember that one. Even after being cured, the guy was still scared of chickens.
Exactly. It's funny, but think about it. That's wahm in action. We can be so convinced of things that simply aren't true.
It's like those times you're so sure of something, and then all the embarrassment.
Humility is key here. Saadi says the key to an intelligent ear, what he calls gushy hash, is recognizing you might not know everything.
So being open to the possibility that you're wrong.
Exactly. Otherwise, you fall into Yali Murakab compound ignorance.
Which is?
Not knowing and not knowing that you don't know. A double whammy.
Okay, I see the danger there. So how do we avoid that trap? How do we get that intelligent ear?
Well, Dr. Dinani points to a major obstacle, pride. We cling to our beliefs or opinions even when evidence suggests otherwise. It's scary to admit you don't have all the answers.
Definitely. Sometimes it feels easier to just dig in your heels than to change your mind.
And that's why these teachings are so relevant, even centuries later. Saadi's urging us to be more self-aware, to question our assumptions, to be open to learning. It's a constant process.
It's like he's saying, check your ego at the door if you really want to understand the world.
Exactly. Humility unlocks true knowledge. Recognizing our limitations is the first step.
So if we're all susceptible to this wahm, how can we ever be sure we're seeing things clearly? It feels a bit daunting, honestly.
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And Dr. Larijani, he jumps right into answering it. He says Saadi points to two powerful tools, aql and sharia.
Okay, those terms sound familiar from our other deep dives, but remind me how they fit here.
Sure. Aql, that's often translated as reason, intellect, critical thinking. It's about questioning what you hear, not blindly accepting.
So like being a detective looking for evidence before forming an opinion.
Exactly. And Sharia, in this context, it provides a framework for ethical decision-making. It's about aligning your actions with a moral code.
So even if you're not Muslim, the message is clear. Find ethical frameworks that resonate with you and use reason to evaluate what you encounter.
Absolutely. That's a beauty of Saadi. His wisdom goes beyond any specific culture or religion. It's about those universal human struggles, you know, trying to see clearly, to make sense of the world, to live a life that matters.
It's fascinating how he connects those everyday struggles to these big philosophical ideas. So if aql and sharia are the tools for fighting wahm, how do they actually work in practice? Can you give us some concrete examples?
Let's explore that. One way to think about aql, for instance, is as a way to identify our own biases. We all have them. But becoming aware of them is the first step towards thinking more objectively.
That's a great point. I'm already starting to think about some of my own biases and how they might be shaping my understanding of the world.
And that's exactly what Saadi would want us to do. He's encouraging us to engage in this process of self-reflection, to question our assumptions, and to be open to new ways of seeing things.
So it's not about eliminating our biases completely, but about recognizing them and taking them into account when we're making decisions or forming opinions.
Exactly. And Sharia, in this context, can be seen as a guide for navigating those ethical dilemmas that inevitably arise in our lives. It provides a framework for making choices that are aligned with our values and principles.
So it's like having a moral compass that helps us stay on course, even when we're facing difficult choices.
Precisely. And remember, this doesn't mean blindly following rules. It's about understanding the spirit of those principles and applying them thoughtfully to our own unique circumstances.
That makes a lot of sense. So we've talked about the danger of waham, of delusion, and we've explored two key tools for combating it, aql and sharia. But I'm wondering, is it really possible to completely overcome this tendency towards delusion? Are we all destined to be trapped in our own limited perspectives to some extent?
That's a great question, and it's one that takes us to the heart of Saadi's teachings. He offers a vision of transformation, of a way of being that transcends those limitations, but it's not an easy path.
Intriguing. I can't wait to hear more about that. But first, I think we need to take a deeper dive into these concepts of aql and sharia and how they can help us navigate the complexities of life. What do you say we explore some specific examples of how these tools can be applied in practical ways?
I'd love to. Let's take a look at how Saadi's wisdom can help us make better decisions, build stronger relationships, and ultimately live more fulfilling lives.
Sounds like a plan. Let's dive in. Okay, so much to unpack here. I mean, completely overcoming waham, is that even possible? It feels like a constant uphill battle.
You know, you've hit on something there. Saadi, he doesn't present this as some quick fix. It's an ongoing process, refining how we see things.
So how do we keep those, what do you call them, intelligent ears open, especially when, like, our own ego gets in the way?
Dr. Larijani, he makes a fascinating connection. It's about how we view nature.
Nature, okay.
He says many people see nature as this, vast, impersonal force, just a resource to be used.
Right, like we're separate from it, that whole man versus wild idea.
Exactly. And he argues this actually mirrors how detached we are from our own souls.
Oh, okay. Explain that.
It's like we reduce ourselves to just energy instead of recognizing the depth of our inner world.
I think I get it. So by seeing ourselves as separate from nature, we're also separating from a part of ourselves.
Right. And that separation, it feeds right into waham.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So how do we bridge that gap then? Reconnect with both nature and our souls?
Dr. Larijani, he suggests instead of seeing nature as something out there, we view it as a reflection of our inner world.
Ooh, I like that.
He even uses the phrase, dwelling place for our souls.
Beautiful. So it's not just about appreciating nature's beauty, but seeing it as a mirror, almost.
Exactly. And it ties back to Saadi's idea that everything is connected. He doesn't see a hard line between us and the natural world.
Right, we're part of the same whole. Okay, I see how that shift in perspective helps fight waham. When you feel connected, you see things differently.
It does. And that connection, it helps us cultivate marifat, true knowledge, a key part of Saadi's teaching.
We've talked about marifat before, but honestly, I still get a bit lost on how it helps us overcome delusion. Break it down for me again.
Think of it like this waham keeps us trapped in a limited view, like we're looking through a tiny window.
Okay, yeah.
But marifat, that's like seeing with the eyes of your heart, recognizing the divine spark in everything, including yourself.
So it's less about ego, more about a bigger, interconnected understanding of reality.
Exactly. That's how we break free from those beliefs that are holding us back.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But how do we cultivate marifat? Is it something we learn, or does it just kind of happen?
Well, Dr. Dinani talks about the importance of adab in this process, and he uses this brilliant analogy. He compares it to calligraphy.
Calligraphy. Interesting.
Yeah.
How so?
Well, calligraphy, it's more than just writing, right? It's about beauty, precision, expressing meaning in each stroke. Adab is like that, but for life.
Ah, so it's about bringing that level of care to everything we do.
Exactly. It's making even the most ordinary actions into something beautiful, wise, kind.
I can see how that sets the stage for marifat. It's like creating the right conditions within yourself to be receptive to that deeper understanding.
Precisely. Aligning your thoughts, words, actions, everything with those higher principles Saadi talks about.
Okay, so we've got aql, which is about using reason, sharia, for an ethical framework, and adab to cultivate mindfulness and grace. But how does all that tie back to overcoming waham?
Think of them as working together. Aql helps you spot the false beliefs that fuel waham. Sharia guides you toward choices that weaken its hold.
Okay, yeah, follow.
And adab, that creates the fertile ground for marifat to grow. So ultimately, you're moving towards a clearer, more expansive view.
It's not just about knowledge, it's about transforming your whole way of being, right?
Exactly. It's a fundamental shift, moving away from the limitations of ego toward a deeper connection with yourself, with the divine.
Powerful stuff. But gotta be honest, it feels a bit overwhelming. Where do we even begin with such a huge transformation?
That's where Saadi's focus on service comes in. He doesn't see this as a solo mission.
So it's not just about personal growth, but about helping others.
Right. For Saadi, service isn't just good deeds. It's about recognizing we're all connected, acting from love and compassion.
I get it. When you focus on helping others, you're less caught up in your own head, right?
Exactly. And Dr. Larijani shares this great Saadi quote, "Whoever has a grain of generosity in their heart will find a mountain of sustenance in the world."
Wow, that's beautiful. So true abundance comes from giving, not taking.
Precisely. And that generosity, it's not just about stuff. It's a kind word, a listening ear, any act of kindness from the heart.
It's like those small acts, they ripple out and create a more loving world, right?
And for Saadi, that's how we polish the mirror of our hearts, reflecting love, compassion, generosity in everything we do.
So it's not about achieving some far-off enlightenment, but about bringing those qualities into our everyday lives, right here, right now.
You got it. It's about realizing that the path to marifat is interwoven with service, with love, with living a life that's in harmony with truth, beauty, and goodness.
Okay, so we've explored this idea of WAM, this tendency to get stuck in our own limited perspectives. But it feels like such a huge concept. How do we even begin to tackle it in our everyday lives?
Well, that's where Saadi's emphasis on cultivating an intelligent ear, that gushy hush, comes in. It's not about passively absorbing information, but about actively engaging with the world, questioning assumptions, being open to new perspectives.
So it's about being discerning, learning to distinguish between truth and falsehood, wisdom and folly.
Exactly. And that kind of discernment doesn't just happen overnight. It takes effort, practice, a willingness to really challenge our own beliefs.
It's like training a muscle, right? The more we exercise that capacity for critical thinking, for self-reflection, for empathy even, the stronger and more resilient it becomes.
Precisely. And as that muscle grows, we become less susceptible to the influences of WAM, to those, kind of seductive whispers of the ego that try to keep us trapped in those limited perspectives.
Okay, that makes sense. So how can we practically apply these tools of Aql, Sharia, and Adab to strengthen that discernment muscle?
Let's start with Aql reason and critical thinking. One way to use Aql to combat waham is to identify and challenge our biases. We all have them. But becoming aware of them is the first step towards thinking more objectively.
That's a great point. I know I have biases, but sometimes it's hard to even recognize them. Do you have any tips for how to become more aware of our own biases?
One technique Dr. Dinani suggests is to actively seek out different perspectives, especially those that challenge our own. Instead of just reading news or opinions that confirm what we already believe, try engaging with viewpoints that you might disagree with.
So it's about exposing ourselves to a diversity of thought, even if it feels uncomfortable at times.
Exactly. It's easy to get stuck in an echo chamber surrounded by people and information that just reinforce our existing biases, but that doesn't help us grow or develop that intelligent ear that Saadi talks about.
Okay, I see how that would help us become more discerning. What about Sharia? How does that ethical framework help us overcome waham?
Remember, Sharia isn't just about following rules blindly. It's about internalizing a set of values, principles that guide us towards ethical choices. When we align our actions with those principles, it helps us break free from those ego-driven impulses that often lead to delusion.
So it's like having a moral compass that helps us navigate those gray areas of life where it's not always clear what the right decision is.
Precisely. It's about developing that inner sense of what's right and just and letting that guide our actions rather than just following our immediate desires or reacting based on fear or anger.
That makes sense. And what about adab? How does that cultivation of mindfulness and grace fit into this process of overcoming waham?
Well, adab is all about bringing awareness and intention to our thoughts, our words, and our actions. When we practice adab, we become more attuned to those subtle ways that our ego tries to assert itself, and we can choose to respond in ways that are more aligned with our higher values.
So it's like having an inner check system that helps us pause, before reacting impulsively or letting our ego run the show.
Exactly. And as we cultivate adab, it becomes easier to recognize those moments when WAM is trying to creep in, and we can choose to respond in a more, I'd say, skillful and compassionate way.
I love that. So it's not about becoming perfect or eliminating those ego-driven impulses entirely, but about learning to recognize them and choose a different path.
Precisely. And remember, this journey of self-cultivation, of polishing the mirror of our hearts, it's not a solitary pursuit. We need each other. We need the support, the guidance, and the inspiration of others who are walking a similar path.
That makes me think of the communities that form around spiritual teachings like those of Saadi. It's about coming together, supporting each other's growth, and reminding each other of our true nature.
Exactly. And that's why Saadi puts so much emphasis on the importance of seeking out wise mentors, surrounding ourselves with people who uplift us, challenge us, and remind us of our true potential.
It's about creating a network of support, a community of practice where we can share our struggles, our insights, and our aspirations.
And it's about being those mentors for others, sharing our own experiences, offering a helping hand to those who are still finding their way.
Because, as Saadi reminds us, we are all interconnected. Our lives are intertwined, and the well-being of each individual is essential for the well-being of the whole.
Beautifully said. And as we cultivate those qualities of Hegel, Sharia, and Adab, as we work together to support each other's growth, we create a world that is more just, more compassionate, and more beautiful.
A world where the light of wisdom shines brightly, illuminating the path for all who seek truth, meaning, and fulfillment.
And so, as we conclude this 27th deep dive into the wisdom of Saadi, we invite you to carry his teachings with you. Reflect on his words, find ways to embody his message in your own lives, and share his vision of a world where love, wisdom, and compassion prevail.
May his words inspire you to cultivate that intelligent ear, to polish the mirror of your heart, and to dedicate yourselves to the well-being of all beings.
And until next time, may you walk in beauty, wisdom, and peace.